Here are 3 Ecom hiring tips to help you better decide when and who to bring onto your team. So firstly, very simple, expected value. When you bring someone onto your team, you should just simply have an expectation of the incremental value they're going to drive. And remember, it's not just, hey, I'm gonna hire this person, it's 100K, or I'm gonna hire this agency, it's 100K, and I need to make at least 100K. You have to think about how much contribution margin does this person have to drive, and what ROI do I actually want to get on that person. Too frequently, what we see happen is, especially in like the low to mid 8-figure range, is there's all of a sudden so many ideas of how to go and add revenue, enterprise value, contribution margin to the entity, and a lot of teams hire way too many people way too fast. The truth is a lot of things that go and get pursued can be argued they're a distraction, even if they produce positive contribution margin. I'll give you an example. If I'm the CEO of an ecom brand and I decide to bring on, say, an influencer, strategist, manager, and they're going to oversee a program for me. Let's say that all in I'm paying $200K a year for that program. And maybe that program generates for me $700,000-$800,000. Now, when you look at it on a contribution margin basis, after you maybe pay some cuts, some fees for working with creators, et cetera, maybe I'm making $250 to $300K. That's great, extra 50 to 100K. And maybe depending on how you've structured your organization, that's not that big of a burden. But what we often find is you'll have a D2C brand that has one core kind of unit that might create $2-3 million a year of EBITDA, as an example. And then there's like a handful of subunits that are, maybe break even-ish, slight loss, 50K, 100K profit. If you're a brand and you're trying to go and get to the next level of growth, you're not talking about adding if you're doing 20 million a year, you're not trying to add $1 million in sales. Maybe that is good, but for most brands, you're probably trying to go and get to the $30 million a year in sales. You have to make your allocations off of not only expected value, but also, do you think this action has a chance of getting me to where I want to go? Because as you take a lot of these kind of bets, what can sometimes occur is there can almost be a tax across your entire organization of just distraction, but also complexity. The more people you bring in, the more management layers, you can start adding other fixed costs to your team. So you have to be very, very careful when you're assessing to bring on a team or a person. You want to have expected value, and also, can it make profit? Can it make contribution margin and cover the cost of this kind of unit? And then 2, more importantly for the long run, maybe it doesn't generate the outcome you want in the next 3 months, but does this realistically have a chance of being the thing that adds a meaningful contribution to where I'm trying to go overall? Other tip, current team. This is something you almost have to re-underwrite every week these days with AI and tooling. So more and more, fewer people can do more. So if you're a growing brand, a good baseline you may want to try is, hey, I'm not going to bring anyone else on, and I'm only going to do it if our team members have someone on the team who's actually 2xing, 3xing output, and they're like, hey, I actually need to 10x output, and maybe they can't quite do that, and I'm using arbitrary multiples. But I think more often than not nowadays, especially with how automated some of these systems can be, it's often possible to get a lot more done with your current team. Now, the hard part from a management standpoint is how do you actually ingrain that into your team? How do they get trained, or how do they take it upon themselves? And the reality is depending on the size of your organization, there might only be 1 or 2 people on the team who is actually taking it upon themselves to actually learn how to use some of these tools and accomplish some of these workflows. So sometimes you may even have to retool some of them to help train your team to go and get the leverage. But unless you're growing really, really fast, in many cases these days, you actually don't need more people. Now, a counter to that is, in certain categories, there is some value to getting to be the biggest, fastest. And in some cases, it's rare in consumer. It's okay to be bloated a little bit if you're growing incredibly fast, because you can kind of grow into it. But for most brands, growing 20, 30% a year over year, 7-8 figures in revenue, you probably don't have to be hiring as aggressively. Or if you are going to look to hire, is there potentially a cost that you can offset cutting somewhere else? And that gets to the final point. OpEx is a percent, fixed cost is a percent. Essentially, what are your fixed costs of running your business? The This is a common thing that gets talked about in the D2C community. So could be, or the Ecom community, I should say. Some people have said, so you should be less than 15%. Some say it's less than 10%. Over time, this number kind of just keeps on going down, and it's probably just going to keep on going down. And being an agency, we're lucky in that we see so many different structures and different allocations of fixed costs. I've seen like healthy 8-figure brands near 5% of revenue goes to OpEx. I've even seen below 5%, which is crazy. It's really hard and very rare. And that's probably a bar that for many brands is not feasible. However, a good kind of general goalpost is if you're not vertically integrated, you don't run your own manufacturing and shipping and fulfillment, perhaps 10% is a good bar. If you're doing some of those other things, 15 to 20% can be okay. But at the end of the day, you really want to make sure that you're in a position where when you're forecasting your revenue and your contribution margin after your fixed costs, you're happy with the EBITDA and cash flow that you can create from that business. So ultimately, OpEx as a percent, in many cases, you should be looking at that number and seeing it go down over time. Ecom is a leverage game. You want to get leverage by getting bigger and getting bigger at a rate faster than your OpEx goes up as well. So those are 3 Ecom hiring tips. Thank you very much.